part of the Earglue Media family of podcasts.
You're listening to the Cantina Cast, your home for thought-provoking Star Wars talk. Join Albert and Jonesy in breaking down the latest news, trailers, movies, and of course, your favorite characters from a galaxy far, far away.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Cantina Cast. My name is Albert Padilla, and this is episode 315, The Skywalker Saga. This is an idea that we had in the backlog of ideas for, probably the better part of 3 to 4 months now. And we said that at some point, once The Rise of Skywalker had come out, we would come back and kind of just do a retrospective view on the Skywalker Saga itself, talk about our favorite moments, that kind of thing. And so I'm hoping that we could maybe turn this into kind of a regular thing that we do on the show as we bring on additional guests or special guests and that sort of thing. So hopefully you guys enjoy this. And we're also going to talk about the Clone Wars Saved a little bit. We'll talk about On the Wings of Caradex. And with me, joining me once again to do all of this, you may know her as the General, but to me, she'll always be royalty. Please welcome back Maggie Lovitt. Maggie, welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much for having me once again.
Once again. I think your contract ends on the next episode, so you'll be free to go at that point.
No.
Yeah, sorry. So how are you doing? How's everything going?
Pretty good.
I heard you've been getting around on a couple different shows. I think you had one today, yeah?
I did. I was over on Beltway Banthas with Steven.
Great. Now so
that was exciting.
They do the politics and Star Wars show, right?
Yes, they do. And ironically, Steven actually lives about 30 minutes from me.
Oh, so did you guys do that live together, or did you do it over the internets?
We did it over the internet just because of coronavirus fears.
No way, really?
Yes, just because I've been coughing.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, and he has kids,
Gotcha.
So always want to keep the little one safe.
Yeah, no, that's true. Well, I hope you get better. I hope you make it to the next show. No, I'm kidding. You'll make it.
That's how my contract ends.
Exactly. Yeah, you contract the deadly virus, and no, we shouldn't joke about it. All right, well, let's do this. We've got a couple things to talk about with news. And we're scraping the bottom of the barrel here with the stuff that we were trying to come up with, because there really wasn't a whole lot of stuff that really happened. But let's start with, I guess, the overshadowing thing that's happening very soon here. The Rise of Skywalker is finally getting here. It's coming out digitally on March 17th, which just happens to be
my birthday.
Oh, really? I did not know that.
Yes.
Wow.
St. Patrick's Day.
Oh, St. Patrick's Day. No, I did that. She told me that. And I was contractually obligated to plug that for her. So, and then Blu-ray editions, physical copies come out on the 31st. That's a 2-week spread there. I know we've talked about it. They're also doing some other things here, right? As part of it. You brought this up. They've got like a Art of Skywalker. You can win the Art of Skywalker by doing something on, is it just Twitter that they're asking us for?
I've only found it on Twitter so far. So they want you to go over to Twitter and post pictures with the hashtag The Rise of Skywalker and the Saga giveaway. So, and then they send you this little link and you fill out the form and they'll email you if you win.
Oh, so did you participate in this already?
I did.
Oh, all right. Can you tell us what you did or no?
I just posted a bunch of pictures, some from a video that I was working on for another podcast, and all of my Star Wars merch and Galaxy's Edge.
Yeah, I've already pre-ordered this, so I don't know. Maybe I will do this. If I win, we'll give it away here on the show. But this is a book that I'm definitely looking forward to. Just because we've picked up all of them. Have you picked all the other ones up for the movies so far? Sequels?
I haven't. I was waiting to see if they do like a collection of the 3.
Yeah, that would be awesome if they did that, maybe with some additional artwork. But yeah, this is I've been waiting for this for so long, and I don't understand why it took so long, but I've got my own conspiracy theories around that. But nonetheless, it's coming out. We'll be picking that up here very shortly. And then I guess the last thing we have to talk about news-wise, you brought this up, maybe the most controversial thing that's happened in Star Wars ever. But Baby Yoda merchandise has been spotted at Star Wars Galaxy's Edge.
Yes.
Why? Why is this such a big deal?
Because Black Spire is supposed to only have merchandise that you would find at Black Spire. So it's supposed to be all like in-world merchandise. And so this breaks the character of Galaxy's Edge, which I personally am not offended by. I would like to be able to easily buy the child, but I did see quite a bit of Twitter controversy today But how is Disney going to miss out on money?
Yeah. I mean, that's at the end of the day, they're a business, and I know they're trying to keep everything together and make it all, one big story and not break that, I guess, the illusion of it all. But at the end of the day, like I said, they are a business and they're trying to make money. And I'm sure every day someone walks in there and says, where's the Baby Yoda merchandise, right?
I want to see the child.
I want to see the child, yeah. Direct quotes from the series. Yeah, and so this makes sense. I don't see what the big deal is. I mean, I do, but I don't, right? I don't know. It's fine either way. Chill out. Don't get so bent out of shape because they're selling Baby Yodas there.
Just buy the Baby Yoda and be happy.
Yeah. So where do you go and find this then if you can't? Like if you're not at Black Spire?
I think it's over on Main Street, USA. I can't remember the name of this shop, but there's one that's like full of Star Wars stuff that's outside of Black Spire.
Yeah. I'm surprised they don't have like a Baby Yoda or the child store, right?
They should.
Or like the Mandalorian store only at this point.
I know at Christmas time when I was in Disney World, beginning of December, they were like completely sold out of Mandalorian merch. It was depressing.
Yeah, and even that was like probably at that time pretty limited. Like they really didn't have a lot of the stuff that we see today out there just yet. Yeah. So anyways, yeah, well, that's a developing story. We'll keep you posted week to week on how this plays out. So you can look forward to that. Okay, well, let's get into the Clone Wars Saved segment. And we're going to be talking quickly here about On the Wings of Caradox, which was the third episode in Season 7. And so hopefully you've had a chance to see it. We're not going to do a review or kind of break it down scene by scene. So if you haven't seen it and don't want to be spoiled, and turn this off. If you've not seen it and you don't care, get ready and go watch it too if you want to follow along. But I guess this episode overall, I would say, was pretty good. I mean, this is the rough thing, the tough thing for me. Like reviewing these episodes, or at least talking about them, is really tough because we've already talked about them a couple of years ago. So it's what we're really focused on, at least what I'm focused on, is what's changed, and I'm looking more at the updated graphics and the sound and all that stuff that was added in. But I have to take a step back and just say, okay, are these episodes really good? And I think they are. I mean, I don't think they're bad episodes at all by any means. It feels like the Clone Wars really did just pick up where it left off. They're solid episodes, but in this one, there wasn't a whole lot that happened really, right? Development wise.
No, it's a fairly slow episode.
Yeah. I mean, there was a lot of action, and I'll still say this, like these first three, the cinematography around the action sequences, some of the best that we've seen in the Clone Wars, which I think is a credit to the team there, the production team, in what they've done so far. But this one was really heavy on a lot of the action itself. I guess some of the bigger noticeable changes in this episode. First off, with the fortune cookie. I think the original said, "In war, there's no such thing as neutrality." In this episode, it was changed to "survival is one step on the path to living." The whole idea of in war, there's no such thing as neutrality. There's I guess the race that lives here on Skeko Minor are the Poltecs, and they are. I see them as kind of like the Gungans, right? They know war is out there, but they're kind of choosing not to get involved. And this is a common theme. I mean, we've seen this in Star Wars, especially in the Clone Wars, many, many times, where, you've got this alien race that does not want to take a side. They want to stay neutral. And because of what happens, because of the occurrences, they end up getting sucked into the war, and they realize that they do have to take a side one way or the other. They usually side with the, what are they called? The Jedi, all right, and the Galactic Republic. But yeah, nothing really new here in terms of I guess that message. But it was nice to see that kind of reoccurring, that same theme kind of playing up here again. The other thing that happened in this episode, I guess the bigger thing, is towards the very end. So we were talking about this before we came on the air, and I know I'm going to make mention of the original rough cut version, and the last couple of lines in this version, I guess the original version and the updated version, are very different. So here's the old version. It ends with Echo saying, "Thank you, Rex, for saving me. Rex, couldn't have done it without you, my friend. It's going to be just like old times." And that's it. It literally, the camera Rex goes up onto the ship. The camera cuts to Echo standing there. it starts to zoom in on his chest so that we get that last look of his like cybernetic chest that he's got, and credits roll. And that's kind of it. Right. So it almost ends, I wouldn't say on a positive side, but there's nothing really implied or alluded to in any way. The new version, though, ends like this. Echo, Rex, thanks for coming after me. So that right there's a change, because originally it was thank you, Rex, for saving me. It's now Rex, thanks for coming after me. Rex says, that's what brothers do. I'm just sorry it took so long. Hopefully, it's going to be just like old times. So in the original one, Rex says, it's going to be just like old times. Here, hopefully it's going to be just like old times. And they added a line for Echo. He's kind of standing there and very nervously says, yeah, just like old times. And roll credits. So the question I have for you is, why do you think they've, made the change? And do you have any thoughts around what particularly could be bothering Echo, or what he was nervous about in that last moment there?
So I feel like they've shifted a little bit to allude to Order 66, especially since they have more episodes and they'll be able to hopefully explore that in this final season. And so I think there might be some element of Order 66 that maybe Echo's aware of.
So you think he knows about Order 66, or?
I don't know if he knows in its entirety what's coming, but I feel like maybe he's aware of something since he's been in a position that might put him in a place where he's learned something, something that gives him apprehension, or he's been in this situation for so long that he doesn't feel like he can shift back into old times, so to speak.
Yeah, like he's kind of...
Which could shift into him being part of the Bad Batch, like I kind of hope.
Yeah, I would. I like that theory. It would explain why he is nervous about it. Like he knows, kind of the bigger picture here and what's going on. And you would think if he really knew all the details, he would stop him before he got on the ship and said, "Hey, whoa! Before you go any further, I got to tell you something that's kind of big and it's going to blow your mind. Get ready, have a seat," kind of thing. But maybe they're doing that for dramatic reasons and kind of playing that out a little bit longer. I'm trying to think what else he could be nervous about. I mean, it could be as simple and as innocent as, hey, yeah, you think things are going to be the same, but look at me. I've got, one arm. I'm more machine than man now, and I'm not going to be able to just fit in with the rest of the clones. In fact, I look nothing like the rest of the clones by any means. And maybe that's what lends it to him going over to the Bad Batch, because they don't look like everybody else. They are, the odd ones out, the odd couples and that sort of thing. So maybe there's something there. Yeah, I think we'll find out. And if we don't find out in the next episode, it's if they do bring these guys back in the last 8 that we've got still coming, then my guess is we'll probably see some of that play out there. So overall, what did you think about the episode?
I think it was good. It was Clone Wars.
Yeah. Are you happy with these episodes though?
I don't know. I can't tell. So I liked last episode more than I liked this episode in the first one. I will say that. But I'm hoping to get more into the storyline. Yeah. I think once we get past these 4 episodes that already existed, that more will come.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Okay. Well, and that's really it. There's go watch the episode. We've got one more left before we get into the Ahsoka episodes, and those should be a lot of fun. We'll definitely be breaking those down and getting into Easter eggs and all that stuff. But until then, we will wait. So let's talk about our main show. And so we're going to talk about the Skywalker Saga. So before we begin, I posted this question about what is the Skywalker Saga, because I've heard a lot of different definitions, varying degrees of what the Skywalker Saga is. And this isn't coming from, fans like us. This is coming from people even at Lucasfilm. I think the Skywalker Saga, as I was doing the research, right, this really didn't even start as a term. It didn't even make itself into like the Star Wars lexicon until I think just before Star Wars Celebration and the Rise of Skywalker trailer. And I remember Kathleen Kennedy as being one of the first people to kind of say this and talk about, the new movie in the Skywalker Saga And it got our ears perked because we were thinking, why would they distinguish the Skywalker saga from just Star Wars? Because up until then, we'd always just talked about it as this is Star Wars.
Star Wars.
Yeah, it was never, no one ever called it the Star Wars saga. But it was just Star Wars, and it included everything, right? At least in my book, it always included everything from canon, all the movies, the TV shows, everything from Legends. This was all just Star Wars. And especially if you're talking to like everyday normal people who don't geek out about this all day long, the minute you start throwing out canon and G-level canon stuff from Legends, you just like blow their mind and they turn away and they don't talk to you ever again. But that's just me.
Yes.
But anyway, so how would you define, I guess, the Skywalker saga? At least in your head, what do you think of when you hear that?
I agree with you that this is something that's a new term. I think somewhere on my list of red flags for the Rise of Skywalker is the term Skywalker Saga, when that started getting used in reference to the Rise of Skywalker coming to an end. I think it's interesting because I never really viewed Star Wars as just the Skywalker story. And there's an element to that where I think that's what Disney thought Star Wars was all about, was just the Skywalkers, and that's why there was such this rush to end the film with Rey Skywalker. And I feel like it's one of those situations where you get way down in the weeds and you miss the forest around you, which is Star Wars. So I definitely am not one to use the Skywalker saga. I think of it as Star Wars, just an all-encompassing Star Wars.
Yeah, I agree. For me, I think that's kind of, I've always taken it myself. It was really just kind of everything. I mean, it was easy to draw a line between Legends and canon, right? That's pretty easy to do, right? But yeah, for me, it was kind of everything, because I think of Star Wars, and how do you not include something like Rogue One? How do you not include the Mandalorian, right? I mean, this really nothing to do with Skywalker. I mean, there's, some loose connections here and there, but it's not about, Luke Skywalker or the Skywalkers. All right. Well, so for the sake of this discussion, all that said, I do want to focus on their definition, at least the best definition I found, which is by them saying that the Skywalker saga is truly just the 9 movies, and it does not include, Rogue One, Solo, that kind of thing. But I do want to talk about those just briefly, because I do want to at least, mention that those movies are all very important, and they kind of help tell the overall story for us. I mean, who's ever seen Rogue One and didn't wait for that Vader scene at the very end, right?
Oh,
I mean, that's a Skywalker. But yeah, so let's talk about that real quickly. So I know we've talked about the 9 movies. I think when we did our quick, lightning round of questions with you, you had mentioned, Rogue One as being one of your favorites, if not the favorite. But what did you think about Solo? How was that for you when that came out?
I loved Solo.
Yeah.
I am all about a second Solo happening. I would love to see that happen. I thought it was great fun. I want more Star Wars heist movies. And I loved Kira. I thought she was fantastic.
Complex.
And that entire Darth Maul, it was all very exciting.
Yeah, we did a Kira episode, and I think we all agreed at least Jonesy and I agreed that she is super complex, right? I mean, she's got so many layers to her, and there's so much there. I mean, I'd really love to know more, especially kind of the way it ended, just exactly what happens with her, because I don't think anybody could predict what she is going to do next. And that's the kind of the beauty about her character. So yeah, and by and large, I think Solo was a lot of fun. I love what Ron Howard did. I think given the situation that he had and what he came into, he made the best of what he had. And it's got some it's got some slower parts in there and things that didn't really work for me. But at the end of the day, I thought it was a really fun movie, and it does feel like Star Wars just as much as Rogue One, and as much as, if not more, than some of the dang Mang movies. So I don't know. It was I really enjoyed it as well. I thought it was a great movie. For the TV series. So given the choice between, let's talk about these, because we've got the Clone Wars, we got Rebels, we have Resistance, and we have the Mandalorian, but I don't want to talk about the Mandalorian just yet, because I know where you stand on the Mandalorian. But given, if you're going back and you're thinking about, okay, what is my TV series? Is it the Clone Wars? Is it Rebels? Is it Resistance? Which is the one that resonates with you most, that you could just, if you had to pick one, you're on an island, you have food and water, But you have to watch one of these. Which one would you watch?
Clone Wars, hands
Clone
down.
Wars, nice. Why is that?
It's the one that I've been able to rewatch the most. It has the characters that I really love and care about, and I really like the progression of the story. So I could see myself rewatching it multiple times on that desert island.
Yeah, yeah, right. And there's so many stories. I mean, that's the cool thing about it, and there's just so many other characters that we became privy to. A lot of the storylines, some of the arcs are really dark, some of them are funny. So it's very dynamic, right? It's not just the same thing over and over again, which I really liked. I would say also one of the things that attracts me to the Clone Wars, and it's not my favorite of the three, by the way, but one of the things that attracts me to the Clone Wars is the expansiveness and just how grand everything really is. And I know we kind of talked about this a couple episodes ago, but just how grand in scope it really turned out to be ever since the Clone Wars were mentioned in episode 4, right? In my wildest dreams, never would have thought it was this big or expanded or this expansive in terms of the storytelling and the characters and all the events that happened during the wars themselves. So that's a huge credit to it as well.
So which one would you take to the desert island?
To the desert island, I'm going to take Rebels.
Oh.
Yeah, the Clone Wars, I absolutely love the Clone Wars. For Rebels, though, for me, it was just, and I'm going to get real mushy here, but Rebels gave me, I just loved the love story between Kanan and Hera. I loved the family aspect of it. It seemed just as much as I love the expansiveness of the Clone Wars, this one was a little bit more contained. So it was, I'm going to use the word intimate, although I don't mean that in like a, weird term or anybody means, but it just felt the storytelling was just a little bit more tighter. And we didn't have to really think about this grand picture that was going on behind us because we knew what was going on with the Empire already and all of that. But I just love the characters day in and day out. I love the dynamics of them. Like that again, that family aspect is just what really, really resonated with me. And I'm a big fan of the Ghost. I love that ship. I'm like obsessed with that ship. So yeah, I mean, all that I guess kind of plays into why I'd take that one with me. Nothing against the Resistance, but yeah.
Rebels is number 2 for me too.
Oh, so where does the Mandalorian fit then?
If I could only take one thing from Star Wars, I would probably take the Mandalorian.
Okay, well.
The show.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Oh, so you would I thought you meant like the Mandalorian over everything else in Star Wars. Or did you mean that?
I might have meant that.
Okay, well, that's fine. It says a lot. I mean, it's a great show.
I think it's either the Mandalorian or Rogue One.
Ooh.
It's the two things that truly feel like Star Wars and captures that feeling that I need it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I like the. I'm down. I mean, the Mandalorian is amazing, and as long as they don't try to jump the shark too soon, I mean that show's got legs for days, right? It's gonna keep going, and there's. I mean, I thought Favreau's just done an amazing job with it, so. Yeah, I'm super excited about season 2.
I've heard some really good things about season 2, so I'm really excited.
Are there things you can tell us?
No,
okay.
But I'll message you afterwards.
Okay. I'll tell everybody else later. No, I'm kidding. I won't. All right, so let's do this. So let's go into the Skywalker Saga as it's, I think, defined as by Disney. And so we'll focus the rest of the conversation on the prequel trilogy, the original trilogy, and the sequel trilogy. But I want to talk first about, I guess, the overall impact of these films, both on like film industry, the film history, and you probably have something to say there. And then maybe just overall on pop culture. But so when you think of those movies, you think about the impact of Star Wars. How do you think those have impacted those over the years?
Oh my gosh, how can I even pare it down to a brief description of how it's changed everything? I mean, Star Wars is right up there with Star Trek in terms of science fiction changing how we look at our own technology. Yeah. There's so much that both of those shows brought to our culture. I mean, data pads and all this kind of, touchscreens and
holograms,
all the stuff holograms, everything that we have now was brought to us so long ago in a galaxy far, far away. Yeah. And in terms of history in the industry, I mean, the way that George Lucas did Star Wars: A New Hope really did revolutionize so much within the industry.
Yeah, I know. I mean, everything from so Star Wars, it kind of introduced this idea of like high concept blockbuster, right? I've got an idea. It's going to make billions of dollars, and it's all proof of concept. But trust me, people running around with laser swords is going to work, right? This was just unheard of. No one ever pitched this kind of an idea, and no one ever got it taken seriously. And if you go back and look, he got turned down quite a few times before he finally just did it on his own, right? So even then, it wasn't an idea that was really socially acceptable or acceptable, at least within the industry. The idea of like blockbuster franchises, it really kind of started with Star Wars. I mean, yeah, we had the James Bond movies, and we had, I'm trying to think what other movies had a lot of sequels prior to that. But, back in 77, there really weren't these blockbuster franchise. And this was kind of the onset of them. We got this, then we started getting into Indiana Jones. We've got the Back to the Futures, right? I mean, just boom, boom, boom. This was like the start, the big bang, if you will, of these blockbuster sequel trilogies, I should say. And then, Star Wars really pushed the envelope, and it continued to do so, not just with Episode 4, but in 99 with the prequel trilogies, and even you could argue even now with the sequel trilogies. But it really pushed the envelope around sound and special effects.
Yes. And do you know the controversy about the opening credits?
No, I don't.
Yes. Okay. So his decision to omit the opening credits in Star Wars led to him resigning from the Directors Guild and being fined $250,000 for not crediting the director in the opening title sequence.
Oh, yes. So at that, yeah.
Yes. And so that changed how the industry approached opening credits.
Right. Because prior to, if you go back, and I think we've mentioned this in the show, when you look back at like some of the old movies, you had to sit there and watch all these credits before the movie actually ran. And he was like, no, this is getting in the way of the story. I want to go right into the story. We'll table all that to the very end. And I remember he was bucking heads with a lot of the people in that industry. Like, what are you kidding? This is not how we make movies.
And it's still discussed to this day. That's still very much like
really?
an open sore in the industry. Yes. Because it's all these people who put all their effort into this film. People don't wait to the end of a film. Yeah. If you catch them in the beginning, they're forced to watch those names.
I mean, I can see that. I do. I don't know that I've ever thought about which I would like more, because there's something about, I'm one of the people that reads the credits. So, right. I like to see who the writer is. I like to see who the director is. I don't really care about the key grip and, best boy and art, whatever it is that they are. Right. I don't. I get they helped out, but that's not what I'm looking for. But I am one that does look at those credits, and I do follow them because that stuff that matters to me when I go see a movie. I think by and large, a lot of people, to be honest, don't though, right? I mean, the general audience, they're going in to see the people that are billed as the main actor or maybe the director, but usually it's the actors. Am I right?
Yeah.
So
unfortunately,
right. Yeah. And that's just kind of where we are. But yeah, that's interesting that it's still being debated to this day. I thought this was kind of put to rest and no one talks about it anymore. Like this is just what we are. This is who we are now. Interesting. So yeah, so the visual effects were, cutting edge at the time with the 99 release of The Phantom Menace. We got digital effects, right? He was really pushing for being able to do a lot of stuff with digital cameras, digital technology. I distinctly remember him saying in some interview back around that time that at some point, jokingly, we wouldn't even necessarily even have to have the real actors on stage. And I know that, close your ears because I'm sure this is like cringeworthy for you, right? But what he was alluding to was that at some point the technology is going to get there where we don't necessarily need that, and we can start doing some of the things like we saw in The Irishman just recently, right, where they were able to age some of those characters digitally.
And this is actually a huge controversy going on right now. Our digital, there's a whole bunch of stuff within the Screen Actors Guild about protecting our images to keep that from happening in the future, because there is a lot of rumors about wanting to quote unquote revive dead actors to have them star in films,
aka Carrie Fisher. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but that's what comes up. Yeah,
I mean, I was going to say exactly Carrie Fisher.
That's again, I probably don't spend as much time thinking about it as you do, but I can see where that is. I mean, it's a slippery slope, right? Right, where does it end? And it goes back to the conversation that we've had when we were talking about after the passing of Carrie Fisher. I think we brought it up on this show. It's like, okay, which is bigger? Is the character of Leia bigger than the character or the person that plays her? right? Because they were talking about, well, we're going to recast and that sort of thing, or there was rumors that they were going to recast and then they weren't going to recast and all that. But so the question was, if they didn't, could they not use her likeness? Because that is the character. And even though they're kind of one and the same, right? Princess Leia and Carrie Fisher really are the same person to me. But is that okay? Right? Is it, I don't know. It's a tough question to answer.
Yeah.
I guess the other things as far as what it did for the film industry, I think it really paved the way for creators to kind of come pitch whatever they want and say, look, I'm coming in, I'm going to create this thing, I'm producing it, I'm going to fund it, and I want to hold on to all the rights for it, right? This is, again, another one of those things that George Lucas did that didn't really fly with a lot of people. And he ended up kind of coming out on top at the end of the day when it was all said and done. And we didn't even talk about the merchandising, which we've spoke about in the show before, but this was the biggest thing he did by telling everybody that I want some cut of the merchandising for it, and then went on to sell, billions of these toys and got a little profit from that deal. So I think in retrospective, I don't think they would have made that deal had they had a second choice or a second chance. But yeah, this is all very different. And that sent all kinds of waves, not just into the movie industry, but into like the toy manufacturing industry. I mean, it really changed the way Kenner did their business. There's a great documentary out on Netflix right now that talks about all of that as well. I'm drawing a blank on the name. I think it's the Toys That Made Us. I don't know.
I think that's what
something
it's called,
like that.
Yeah.
If you get a chance,
it's on Netflix,
yes,
right?
Yes. If you get a chance, watch that. It really gets into a lot of what happened there with Star Wars and George Lucas and the merchandising and just what Kenner had to do to respond to how big Star Wars was and what it brought to the industry, the toy industry. So, and then let's see, pop culture wise, I mean, I would argue
who hasn't heard of
that's
Star
exactly
Wars?
right. I mean, I would argue Star Wars is literally like it is part of American culture and it's part of other national cultures as well, not just America. It's not exclusive to America, right? But it is where it started. And I know like there's very few people today that you run into who have never heard of Star Wars. They may not have seen the movies. I ran into somebody 2 weeks ago, as a matter of fact. We were talking about Star Wars and I was talking about my podcast because that's all I ever talk about. And he mentioned to me, he's like, hey, don't take this the wrong way, but I've never actually seen Star Wars. And I thought he was kidding. I'm like, no, yeah, you've never seen Star Wars? Yeah, that's a good one. No, he's like, no, I've never seen Star Wars. I'm like, really? So it's shocking to think that someone has never seen it, but he had heard of Star Wars. He knew what Star Wars is. He said there was a guy, there's a big, tall, black, this is what he said. There's a big, tall, black guy with a sword. I'm like, yeah, that's Darth Vader. That could mean a couple different things, but yeah, I knew what he was talking about. Darth Vader, right? And I was like, so the idea, right? The icons of Star Wars, even for somebody who's never seen them, are very identifiable, just as they would be for like somebody like Mickey Mouse, right? Or Pac-Man or Super Mario from Mario Brothers, right? These are all these iconic characters that you see, and they're just entrenched and they're ingrained in kind of in the DNA of who we are as a culture. That's what Star Wars is. You're hard pressed to find anybody at this point who actually has no idea what this is. In developed countries, don't get me wrong. Or at least have, people that have not seen the movies themselves.
Yeah, I actually just accidentally spoiled Darth Vader's death for someone like 2 weeks ago on Red Dead Redemption 2. I do the online. And so I was in this posse with my usual crew. And this one guy had said that he was a Star Wars fan and he's playing Jedi Fallen Order. So I was like, oh, okay. And so I just like casually mentioned Darth Vader's death. And he was like, what? And I was like,
yeah, how do you not know this?
Oh. And everybody in the group razzed him for not knowing that. Even people who are like, I've never even watched Star Wars and I know about that. So it's funny.
Yeah. And I mean, depending on where people are, people come into this fandom at different times, right? Mm-hmm. Some come in because of The Mandalorian, right? They've never seen anything but they've never seen Star Wars before. They know it exists. They may probably have some loose concept of, lightsabers, and they know it's in space with starships and that sort of thing. But that's it. And for whatever reason, they get hooked on The Mandalorian. They come in and that's all they know. And so they begin the process that we've all gone through is in trying to go back and watch the movies and watch the TV shows and look at the novels and look at the comic books and all that stuff, play the video games. So yeah, it's that's not uncommon for us to find somebody who doesn't know everything about Star Wars, even some of the big bolder items like, Darth Vader, spoiler alert, is going to die, right?
Yes.
That's just funny. Was he a younger person or?
Yeah, he was 21.
Yeah, so relatively young, little whippersnapper there. So that's kind of, more or less some of the, I guess, the impacts of, industry, pop culture. So I'm going to throw this question out there, but of the three sagas, which one is your favorite saga and why? I'll give you 1 second to think about it. Go. Thank you.
Okay, so this is such a hard question for me because I would personally choose one film from each of the trilogies and then make my own trilogy. But since that's not the question.
That's not the question. Nice try.
So I'm torn between sequel and prequel. Prequel for nostalgia and sequel for the story because it has The Last Jedi.
Mm-hmm.
No, not Last Jedi. Yeah. So,
but what was it about it that resonated? Is it the characters? Is it the struggle? Is it the total breakdown of, like Rian Johnson went out and tried to really break everybody in The Last Jedi, and we kind of went from that. I mean, what is it that resonates with you?
The Last Jedi felt like a perfect honoring of all of the Star Wars that has come before, and yet it didn't let itself get tied down to that nostalgia. It honored it without shoving it in your face. Mm-hmm. And I would take his two sons of Octu over how The Rise of Skywalker ended.
Yeah.
I thought that was a perfect, beautiful ending for Luke Skywalker because it was full circle for him. That first scene of him staring at the two sons,
the binary sons,
and the binary sons. So I feel like there's something about Last Jedi in terms of storytelling that really resonates with the entire trilogy of trilogies.
Yeah, no, I can see that.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think, and that, to your point, I think The Last Jedi it does do that better than the other two movies. But yeah, that's not, I've heard that feedback from a lot of people, honestly, especially people that are sequel trilogy fans. That is kind of the cornerstone of that fandom for them, right? Of why that is so important, why Star Wars is important, why the sequel trilogy is important to them. I think for me, it's not even a debate really. It's hands down, it's the original trilogy because it's what I grew up with. It's all I know. I mean, in terms of, and it's all I had for like a very long period of my time. And at some point when I become a Force ghost, it'll still be no matter what comes out between now and the next 10 years. I think that this is just going to be the one that always sits with me. I think about like that line from the Force Awakens where Han says, "Chewie, we're home." Right? To me, that was kind of like an analogy for a lot of Star Wars fans. Really, it wasn't just original trilogy fans, but everybody at that point. That was kind of our mantra, right? We're home. We finally got to see Star Wars all over again. For me, it was because Han Solo said it, and he was older and grizzled and, salty dog, if you will. That's what really kind of struck and kind of hit home with me. So I think the original trilogy will always be my Star Wars, and I'm putting the air quotes here. But I also associate and I'm going to try not to digress too much here, but I associate the original trilogy with almost like an Age of Innocence.
I can see that.
And I've said this so I do another show called The Basement, which I haven't done in a while. Don't start me on that. But in The Basement, I've mentioned this many times before, that the movies of like the late 70s and the movies of the 80s as a child, it was just a very different experience growing up back then. And even from like different from like the 2000s and even the 1990s, just 10 years later, very, very different to be brought up in that time was very different. And there's something special about growing up then with these movies, like the original trilogy. They're very linked to me in my mind with like Saturday morning cartoons and sugary breakfast cereals and Atari 2600s and video game arcades and cheesy 80s music, right? It's all kind of this master plan, this master aesthetic for me that it's really hard for me to kind of decouple all of that. If that makes any sense at all. So that's kind of why the original trilogies are always going to be my favorite. And they're good movies too. I mean, arguably my favorite is still Empire Strikes Back. It will always be my favorite movie, and I think a lot of it is the nostalgia of it too. I mean, it's a great movie, but it's hard for me to detach my head and my mind right from these things. It's just kind of one all in the same for me. Anyways, wow, sorry, I didn't really need to go off like that. So let's talk about this then. So we talked about the original trilogy, prequel trilogy. On the prequel trilogy, I've never really understood why people didn't like it. Like for the life of me, I get there's problems with it, and I get where people Jar Jar is like an easy target, but it's not really any different. I don't think that's really fair. But I never really understood why people had so much like animosity towards the prequel trilogy.
Neither did I. I mean, I love it for what it is. I don't expect it to be any more than what it is. Yeah. And I feel like maybe part of it is because so many people held out so much hope for the prequel trilogy coming out of the sequel trilogy and having that, time period in between the two. And they were probably hoping to capture that same feeling that the original trilogy gave them,
but didn't for them.
But didn't. Yeah. So, I mean, maybe it's a lot with how people are feeling about the sequel trilogy.
Yeah.
It's just expectations are always going to be better than what you end up with.
Yeah,
which is why I went into The Rise of Skywalker with low expectations.
Lower the bar, people. You'll be better off in the end if you do.
Exactly.
And I think for the prequel trilogy, those like my experience was so different. The people that I was working with and socializing with at the time were all Star Wars fans, and we kind of went in this very optimistic, and we stayed optimistic throughout, even through the Clone Wars, which is really it's not my favorite, and I would agree and argue that it is probably towards the bottom of the list, if you will. But it's still a good movie. It's still Star Wars, and there's still a lot of great things that happen in there that I don't understand how anybody could not get excited about. So yeah, my experience is very different. I have some really, really amazing fond memories of the prequel trilogy and just leading up to that, and then the 6 years that kind of passed as that was going on. Okay, so I put this question in here, and hopefully you saw it beforehand. If not, it's going to be a curveball. But what movie did you feel like had the best trailer out of all of those?
Out of just the trilogies?
Yeah,
or
original.
Of all Star Wars?
Original, prequel, and sequel.
Last Jedi?
Yeah.
Yeah, Last Jedi.
Final answer? Or do you want to phone a friend?
I think that's I'm thinking, and I'm pretty sure that's my final answer. Revenge of the Sith had a really good trailer.
Yeah.
But The Last Jedi made me cry, so.
Really?
Yeah. It just had so much emotion in the trailer.
It really did. Yeah, I'll give it that. It was a very, very emotional trailer. I would pick. Oh boy, I would pick. It's either going to be episode 1 because we had just waited for so long, and before thinking we would never get Star Wars again, and I can clearly remember every aspect of that movie or that trailer when it came out, where I was when I saw it for the first time. This was like right around. I mean, the internet was out, but this is where, and this is going to sound funny, but video, right on the internet was starting to become a thing. Like, right. I mean, there were clips out there and you could download a 1 meg file clip and it would take you all night to download it. And then you would watch it, but the resolution was really crappy. But this was one of the first things that I remember being like on QuickTime, when QuickTime was as popular as it was, probably at the height of its popularity just before that. And this was people were starting to get broadband modems. And so we were starting to watch trailers. Where I'm going with this is we were starting to watch trailers on computers in high resolution or higher resolution. And we didn't have to wait weeks for this thing to download. So that in itself was kind of an experience. And so some of that's probably, I'm kind of conflating the experience with the actual trailer, but just the anticipation of a new Star Wars coming out after so long, that really, really said a lot for me when that first came out. But so I would either pick that trailer, or I would even pick maybe The Force Awakens, because it's the same kind of concept, right? It'd been so long, and that trailer was kind of all adrenaline, right, beginning to end. I don't know. It was exciting stuff. Let's talk about the themes of Star Wars. So if you had to pick like a favorite theme, or maybe a message that was played through the trilogies themselves, what kind of bubbles up to the top for you? Something that stands out?
Hope.
That's.
I pulled a bunch of quotes from all the times that hope has been used throughout all of the films and Clone Wars and Rogue One. And I feel like hope is the binding that connects all of the Star Wars stories together.
Yeah. And that's really great, because I'm like looking at mine, and all of these can really go back to hope at the end of the day, right? And then it's kind of the central theme of Star Wars. There's some like maybe not as specific, but like, good always winning, always conquering. Sure, things get dark from time to time, and you kind of feel like all hope is lost, but at the end of the day, light always prevails. And Star Wars is about heroes. It's always going to be about heroes. I don't care what anybody says. You're going to have bad people. You're going to have the dark side. You have the Empire. You've got the Sith. You've got the First Order, the Final Order. All these people are great. Palpatine. All of them are great. They're awesome. I really enjoy all of them. But in Star Wars, it's always the heroes that win, and that's how it should be. That's the storytelling, right?
Yes.
So that idea that there's always light there, and going back to your theme of hope. We always hope that the light's going to be there, and I think we get that from Star Wars. I've liked the idea in Star Wars also that we have characters that seemingly come from very modest backgrounds, even though their lineages may not be modest. You've got characters like Luke and Leia. You've got Jin, Rey, Han Solo, for all we know, Anakin. You can throw Anakin in there as well. They come from pretty much nothing, and they're able to become these iconic hero type characters. And I think that says a lot. I've always liked that message. And we can throw Broom Boy in there, right? Who was kind of that.
Yes.
He was the model for that, right? That not all hope is lost, and anybody can be somebody.
I hope I hope that Broom Boy is doing well. That's a tongue twister.
Yeah. We miss you, buddy, wherever you are. And then the one that surprisingly, sorry, I asked for one. I have three here. I feel very selfish. The one that really, like, as I was typing my notes out, I just like, you know what? This one stood out for me, and it came out from The Rise of Skywalker. I'm going to say something nice about The Rise of Skywalker. It was confronting fear. There's that line in there where Luke says that confronting fear is, all the greatest, whatever it is, of the Jedi, right? But the idea of confronting fear is a very reoccurring theme that goes throughout all of the movies, and literally everything in Star Wars is kind of grounded in that message as well. I mean, you can think about any movie, think about any of the movies, any of the TV shows, episodes, the comic books, the novels. Everything goes back to somebody, being conflict, which is just basic storytelling, but then being able to have to conquer their fear in order to kind of rise above. And that comes back from hope too, right? Hope is usually what drives them to be able to kind of conquer that fear. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, all right, let's get into some fun stuff real quick. Give me your what are your favorite characters and their arcs, and why?
So I loved Cassian Andor and Rogue One.
Yep.
But for the trilogies, I think Han Solo, Obi-Wan, Anakin, Kylo Ren. Yeah, I think this would be probably my favorite. Padme.
Those are all good.
I know, it's
It
hard.
really
I
is
love
hard.
them all. I'm like trying to choose my favorite child here.
We've already your favorite child is the child. We've already established that. So
This is true.
Yeah.
There is no one else.
Yeah. I think for me, it's probably down to two. It's probably either Kylo Ren and Luke for very different reasons. Luke is always my favorite as a kid. I mean, he was my avatar as a kid, even as a child, as a teenager, as a young adult. I wanted to be like Luke. I think I've told this story before. If not, you've never heard it, but I remember fondly as a kid trying to use the Force to like lift objects in the air. And I used to think that maybe the objects were too heavy. And so I scaled back from trying to lift mom and dad's car, and I moved to like the TV. That was still too heavy. Then eventually I tried to move like to my action figures. Still wasn't working. I think at the end of the day, I was like finally down to like trying to move specks of sand, trying to lift sand with the Force. And all this was because I wanted to be like Luke Skywalker. I mean, that was a character that we had never seen before, had never had anybody like him before. So there was a lot of just hope and optimism about him that really just resonated with me. And I don't know. He's always been my favorite.
I had similar experiences with Luke Skywalker too. I remember a childhood memory of my own of actually crashing my bike because I was pretending I was on one of the like land speeders, and I was pretending to be Luke Skywalker training on Dagobah. So I had a backpack strapped to my back, and I had fashioned my own like very crude stuffed Yoda.
Nice.
And so I was flying down the hill in my backyard towards our fence, and I just assumed the Force would take care of me. It didn't.
Yeah. Yeah, you were a liar, Obi-Wan. Yeah, use the Force.
Good job, Obi-Wan.
So it's Obi-Wan's fault.
Yes.
See what I did there?
So I think that's cool that, you know, Luke Skywalker resonated with so many people in their childhood.
Yeah, for sure. I think as an adult, though, and this is where I said it's very different reasons. As an adult, Kylo Ren is the one that has resonated with me the most, not because of what I feel with him, but I feel for him, I guess, because as a father, having sons and knowing what he went through and how he was tormented and all that. I mean, it just breaks your heart as a parent to think that your child has gone through that. And that's why I really feel with like Leia and Han, and I feel for that character. And then as tragic as it is, but the way it ended is just, I don't know, it leaves a big hole in your heart, if you will. Right. But
yeah, I'm still grieving.
What's that?
I'm still grieving.
Still grieving. So yeah, I mean, Kylo Ren, and he's so dynamic, and hats off to Adam Driver, right, in terms of what he's done with that character and just his acting chops alone. It's just an amazing character. So yeah, I mean, I would have never thought that anybody would get up there for me in the ranks of terms of who my favorite character was. But I am glad that he is there, especially with next to Luke. All right, least favorite character. This one's easy for me to go.
Oh God, I can't even think because I just love everybody. I mean, Palpatine sucks.
Well, yeah, but he sucks as a wait. So he's
but he's cool. But yeah. he's cool.
Yeah. I get it.
It's really hard to choose somebody that I hate. Another podcast asked me this, and I was like, I don't know. Anyone who hurts the child.
Yeah, you're very motherly when it comes to the child here.
I am. I want to protect it.
So if you listen to the show with any regularity, you know that it's Maz. I don't like her.
Oh.
She's too creepy.
She is creepy.
She's probably got wandering hands. I would imagine she does. She's always sizing up Chewie, and that's like my boy. So why?
Have you played Battlefront 2?
I have. I have not played it recently, but
she's very creepy. Where's my Wookiee?
Yeah, that whole line. No thanks.
And I love how Han totally deflects.
Right, like it's just
like he's on the Falcon. We're leaving. Yeah, no, I agree with you. She is creepy.
But here's one character that well, no, that's it. I'll just leave it at Maz.
Oh, now I'm curious.
Oh, that's it. Was there, let's talk about was there anything that you felt like went unresolved for too long? If you look back at the original, all the trilogies, right, all three of them, was there anything that went unresolved for too long? Like it took too long for us to get answers to that you felt like they could have just done or should have done a lot quicker or sooner?
Off the top of my head, thinking back to like the original trilogy and the prequel trilogy, I can't really think of too much just because I'm looking at it retrospectively.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really can't think of anything that went unresolved for too long that, did end up getting resolved.
Yeah. Here's one I have. And I don't really have a strong opinion one way or the other on this either. But Rey's parents. So I know I'm like quarterbacking this now that it's all over, and it's a lot easier for me to do this because at the time it wasn't. But I almost feel like Rey's parents got in the way too much looking back, right?
Yes.
Like Luke and Leia's parent reveal wasn't much of an issue because there was no baggage there, right? And it didn't have anything to live up to at the time. But with Rey, I mean, it just feels like they could have, or they should have just pulled that Band-Aid off from the very beginning, and rather than let it become kind of a central piece of who she was, because in the end, it almost didn't matter, right? It didn't. And I get that's part of the message too. It doesn't really matter where you come from, but because it was drawn out for so long, I just feel like it upstaged too much of what we needed to know about Rey and what we wanted to see her develop from,
I mean, from a story point of view, it was bad storytelling because they focused for so long on Rey nobody, that it was like the, what's that film phrase. Not a red herring, but
we call it the J.J. Abrams mystery box.
Yeah,
right?
There's the other phrase, but yeah, basically that.
Yeah.
The MacGuffin.
Oh, right.
Yes. It was there in front of you for too long. So I would agree with you on that one.
Yeah.
Wholeheartedly.
Conversely, is there anything that you feel like is yet to be resolved that we need to know?
So much. So much.
Ben Solo, or what are we talking about here?
Ben Solo, why everyone sidelined Rose.
Oh, yeah.
Why Finn was acting like he didn't even know who Rose was. Poe's whole backstory getting reworked. There's so much.
Yeah, there really is. And the sad thing is, I don't know that we'll get answers.
No, we never will. I've come to terms with it.
That's probably easier to do, so I may go down that path myself. Is there a sacred cow here? Is there anything that you just feel like we should never know about? Or something you just don't want them to resolve? Like you like the idea or the mystery or the intrigue behind it all?
I really never want to learn anything more about Rey's parents.
Yeah.
I hope that I never hear their names, find out where they're living, anything. They are dead to me. They do not matter.
They're dead to me.
They abandoned their child with like a slaver.
Yeah.
So I really don't care about them.
Yeah.
At all.
Well, spoiler alert, and no, I won't say it now, but in the novel, we do get more about them.
I know.
But we're not going to talk about that. Yeah.
Anything past that, I don't care.
Okay. All right. So Yoda was in my camp here in terms of like what I didn't want to know for so long. If it wasn't for your child, I probably would be still on the please don't tell me Yoda's background or anything about him. I'm a little bit more open to it now. I don't know why. I guess it's because, I have a heart and I love Baby Yoda. But yeah, for the longest time, it was like, and Lucas had come out on record and saying that we'll never know anything about Yoda. And there was just something about that. And I thought that was really cool. Like, cool. Yeah, this is something we'll never have to learn about. We'll never know about it. And I'm totally fine with that. I like that idea. And I don't know. It seems like at some point we may know something about the race, which I didn't think we would ever know with the Mandalorian out.
Yeah. I kind of hope that we just never find out still. That is like this big epic quest to find where he belongs, and they just never find it. And the moral is, it's because he belongs with the people who love him.
Aw. We're going to end the show right there. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, that's I do too, and I'm worried now because part of me is worried because of the Mandalorian, but then on the other end, we've also got the High Republic coming in, right? So what are we going to learn from him? And we talked about this on the High Republic. I don't think again he'll be a central character, but what if we learn something about him in that as well? Do I really want to know? I don't know yet. I say no now, but I could be swayed. Okay, let's get into our final questions here, and these are really difficult. So. Just give me we're not going to do top 10 because it'll take all day, but give me like your most memorable moment or moments from Star Wars. And they can just be loose moments. We don't need to get into details, but we're just some of the things that when you think about Star Wars, that just kind of stand out as like, whoa, that's a very iconic moment in time that I really love about the movies themselves.
The throne room battle in The Last Jedi. Yep. I still remember sitting there opening night and just that moment when she reaches up and grabs the lightsaber.
Oh, yeah.
And it was just, oh my gosh, the entire audience just lost their minds, myself included. And then, I don't know, I feel like from the prequel trilogy, my romantic heart remembers the wedding.
Oh, yeah.
And Naboo. I feel like that's probably something that stands out the most for me. And for the original trilogy, I always loved Han and Leia's first kiss.
Oh. Yeah, that's a very tender moment. It's funny, you said two things. We're going to get to music in a minute, but there's two things that you said that actually go with like some of my favorite music. So, but yeah, those are great moments. I'm trying to think for like the sequel trilogy, what my favorite moment is. I'm going to probably go with that too, because that is, the two big Jedi battles for me are Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Kylo Ren with Rey. Mm-hmm. Although Darth Maul, Qui-Gon, Ben, they're up there too. Don't get me wrong. It's like really tight up there, right? Those top in terms of like the Jedi battles. But I think that is still my favorite in terms of like that being the throne room scene from The Last Jedi. Like that is my favorite Jedi battle scene. I love everything about it. The lighting, the choreography, how it gets to that moment, right? And then how it ends, right? We don't talk about that. We don't really talk about how it goes from like, holy crap, this is amazing to, oh no, he's being a jerk again. Yeah. And that I think is a great storytelling element and all that. But anyways, so that's certainly up there for me in terms of the sequel trilogy. Seeing Luke Skywalker again is up there as well. Although I didn't really care for how it played out, but I really enjoyed that. That was finally, we got to see him after so long. For the prequel trilogy, there's a lot of great moments for me, but I'm going to have to say it's that Anakin Obi-Wan fight, because that was something we knew about for so long. And we had talked about it before. And this is what I call the dark times around like the mid 80s, when we knew this story existed. We knew they had the battle, and we knew that Anakin, Darth Vader, lost a couple of limbs of some sort. We didn't know exactly how much, but we know he was severed limbs, or he had severed limbs. And in our minds, we kind of had this whole battle played out. Like at least I did. And I know a lot of the people that were fans that I hung around with, we would just talk about this. Like, what do you think happened? What did that look like? And I heard it's a planet with lava. And we would just sit there and make all these theories up and all these stories about what it would look like. And when that movie finally came out, we finally got to see what was in, what we kind of came up with on our own. It didn't match, obviously, but it was George Lucas that created it. And just being able to see that moment was pretty epic for me. And then for the original trilogy, holy bananas, I don't even know where to begin with that one, because there's so many great moments there. But I think it's the one thing that always comes to mind is the two moments, and they're both in Return of the Jedi. The first one is Luke saluting, jumping off the skiff and coming back up, and then igniting that green lightsaber. I mean, get out of here, right? That's one. And then, because that was the first time that was my Luke, and he was now a Jedi, and he had a new lightsaber and all that. And then the last one is that whole battle at the very end between him and Dad, and the music playing, and they're going back and forth, and the lighting and the shadows, and it's super iconic. The music is just amazing in that moment too. So those are the two big ones for me, I guess, in the original trilogy. Am I wrong? You can tell me I'm wrong.
No, you're right. Those are good moments.
You're right. Okay. Let's see. What about where are we at here? Let's talk about the soundtracks. And this is, I know, come on. This is so unfair that I did this to you. And because I said pick only three soundtrack songs that were your favorites, or themes that were your favorites. But give me what you got. And you can give me more than three if you've got more than three.
Okay. So my three for the Star Wars saga would be Across the Stars, Imperial March, and Duel of Fates.
Oh, yeah.
And then I'm obsessed with the Mandalorian soundtrack. I'm not kidding. I listen to it every day.
What? What do you like, work out to that thing?
No, I just turn it on in the background when I'm like writing or working on something. I've been working on a Cara Dune cosplay, so every time I'm working on that, I have it going. I love Hey Mando. I think it's like such a fantastic, like iconic sounding thing. Like Ludwig Göransson has like killed it with the soundtrack. And I cannot wait for my Spotify recap next year. That's just nothing but Mandalorian.
You listen to this?
Yeah, no. Every day it's like, would you like to listen to this again? I'm like, yep.
Yep. Don't judge me. I do.
But I think it's really good. And I think he captured the essence of previous soundtracks while playing upon this new, Mandalorian universe. Yeah. So
I thought, and that was, I got to be honest, I was not sold on him coming in and doing this. But like you said, I had pretty low expectations. I'll be honest. I had pretty low expectations about the Mandalorian going in. And it wasn't until we were at Celebration and we went to the panel, and they kicked that off, and we got to see all of that kind of, we heard the music, we got to see the special clips that they showed, and I was in. Like I was all in on Ludwig and what he had done in terms of the soundtrack. So yeah, it's great stuff.
Yeah. But in terms of my favorite song from all of the movies, and like number one, 100% is Across the Universe. Or Across the Stars, sorry. Yes.
Yeah.
It was the first Star Wars song I learned how to play on piano.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Well,
I have a very entertaining history with playing Star Wars songs on the piano.
You need to record that, send it to us, and we'll put that as the outro music for this episode. Oh,
God. I haven't played piano in so long.
I'm just kidding. No, we're not doing that.
No.
I'm just kidding.
No,
That'd be cool, though. And that is a great song. And that's like, that's from Attack of the Clones? I'm pretty sure it's from Attack of the Clones, but...
Yeah, it's their love theme.
Yeah. I mean,
it plays before they go into the amphitheater, and then it plays when they get married. Yes. It's beautiful.
That
makes my heart sing.
The Revenge. So I think that's probably the best work he's done. I know that sounds controversial because all of it's really good. But like Attack of the Clone soundtrack and especially Revenge of the Sith. I mean, get out of here. There are so many great songs. I mean, those soundtracks are just amazing beginning to end.
Yeah, I'm going to say something very controversial, I'm sure, but I cannot think of a single song from the sequel trilogy that stands out.
Ooh. I've got a couple.
People talk about it all the time, and it doesn't strike me the same way as the original trilogy and the prequel trilogy. You have so many iconic pieces in those two series that he created that he didn't bring that same feeling. And I don't know if it's just because the movies didn't have the moments to create that music or what, but I don't know.
I can. So, like, we've never gone and discussed this on the show before in great detail, but one of the things that we've said, so with every one of the movies, we've talked about the soundtracks, and we've talked about what tracks have stood out to us and what didn't. And I think the one thing that we've consistently said is in The Force Awakens, Williams feels like he set up a lot of the basic themes that would end up playing in both the Last Jedi and the Rise of Skywalker soundtracks. But those two soundtracks are a lot of they play on the new material that was created in The Force Awakens, and then they intertwine with all of the stuff that came from the original trilogy and the prequel trilogy. And so by the time we get to the Rise of Skywalker, a lot of it is just this masterful collection of music that he's just woven together, right, from all like 40 years of movies, right? Where to your point, I don't know that we were getting these really truly brand new iconic themes in songs. And so, and that may just be part of how, how it was going to end that way. It was probably destined to be like that rather than coming up with new stuff all the time. But nonetheless, I would say for like The Force Awakens, Rey's theme is one that stands out just because we hear that and it is iconic. I mean, you cannot hear it and go, oh, that's Rey's theme. It's everywhere. Kylo Ren's theme is another one. The bum bum ba-da-da, that whole thing is very telling. You know where that comes from. If you play Battlefront 2, you know that you hear that and it's like, oh crap, right, Kylo Ren's right behind me.
Yes.
That's like so scary. But beyond that, I mean, the Snoke theme was kind of another one from The Force Awakens, but that was it sounded very much like the throne room or the opera scene.
Yes.
But anyways, in terms of like my top 3, I don't have a top 3. I have a top 12, and here they go. No, I'm kidding. I would say my number 1 though is the main title. I know that's like a cop-out answer, but it totally is. The main Star Wars thing.
I actually had that on my list. I had that on my list at first too, and I thought, oh, that's a cop-out.
It really is, and I don't care. Unapologetically, the main title is my favorite because it is Star Wars, right? I mean, it's kind of what it is. The other ones that I have, and this is where I get into like picking kids again. So these are all, I'm just going to list them out. I couldn't tell you like what number 2 or 3 is. Escape from Cloud City from The Empire Strikes Back. I talked about Kylo Ren Arrives. That's Kylo Ren's theme. The Luke and Leia theme has always been a favorite of mine. And it's just so beautiful in how they use it in all the movies. Anakin's betrayal from Revenge of the Sith is so like dark and brooding that it's eerie almost. Leia's theme, I love the horns in Leia's theme. It's very, very moving. I've always felt like that was one of the big ones. The throne room and end title from Yavin, right? When they get the medals and that whole thing, I mean, that's just pretty iconic. Yoda's theme is another one. I'm really like the fact that we got to hear it in The Rise of Skywalker when Luke lifts the X-Wing out of the water. Whether you like that scene or not, the fact that song was in there, I thought was amazing. I'm trying to think else. The Binary Sunset, we talked about that one. At least you talked about the Binary Sunset, but that theme is amazing. The Imperial March is another one. We can't not include that one. And then Duel of Fates, because we had never. I'm trying to think if we actually had vocals in a Star Wars outside of Lapti Nek and the Ewok Celebration song. I'm trying to think if we had vocals in any other piece of music from Star Wars prior to Duel of Fates.
I can't think of any.
Yeah, I don't think there was. I could be wrong, but I don't think there was. But I mean, vocals aside, I mean, it's a great piece. So, all right. Last question. So we've talked about all of this stuff, and we've talked about Star Wars and the things we love, the things we don't like, all of the impacts, and looking back retrospectively on the saga. I mean, what is it about Star Wars that we love, even given all of its imperfections? Why is it so important? Why are we doing a podcast tonight on Star Wars?
Oh, God. I think it goes back to hope. This is probably going to sound like so ridiculous. But something I've focused on a lot since the Rise of Skywalker. And when I was feeling really hopeless, for some reason, I think I was really sick when the Rise of Skywalker came out. So I spent a lot of time kind of really down in the dumps because I didn't feel well and the movie had been very disappointing. And I still was holding on to that love I had for Star Wars that's always been there. And, it made me think of, hearkening back to The Last Jedi, that quote about hope is like the sun. If you only believe it when you see it, you'll never make it through the night. And it kind of made me think about, like, my love for Star Wars is still there even when it's dark.
Yeah.
And there's still something about Star Wars that, draws on the innocence of childhood. And for so many of us, we were young when we first were introduced to Star Wars. And so for all of us, it's been there our entire lives. I always joke about that Cassian Andor line in Rogue One, where he says that he's been in this since he was 6 years old. Yeah. And for a lot of us, and it's really interesting because I've talked to people who were original trilogy people who were 6 years old when the original trilogy came out, or like myself, who was 6 years old when the prequel trilogy came out. And so, it's interesting how it resonates with us because it is a generational series. You have 3 generations of people who have been touched by Star Wars, and it's something that connects all of us together. So, like the Force, the Star Wars is the Force.
Well, that's awesome. That was well done. I wrote lightsabers on mine, but no, I'm kidding. No, I agree. I agree 100% with all of that. There's just so much. There's great. It's the great story. It's really everything. I mean, not to get cheesy here, but it's everything we've talked about. All of this plays into it in terms of why this becomes so important to us. And on top of it all, I think there's something. You ever seen the movie High Fidelity with John Cusack?
Yes.
Okay. So he plays a character named Rob Gordon, and there's always a line in there that just has stuck with me forever, because when I talk about movies and I talk about how much I love music and video games and cartoons and all this pop culture stuff, and it's so important to me that this one line kind of explains it all. And I really think that kind of sums it up for Star Wars for me too. But he says, I agree that what really matters is what you like, not what you are like. Books, records, films, these things matter. Call me shallow, but it's the truth. And by this measure, I was having one of the best dates of my life. That, to me, says, for me, everything about pop culture, about Star Wars, and why this stuff is so important. Yes, it's about the messages. It's about the message of hope and, good over evil and all these great things that we've talked about, and the special effects and lightsabers and everything else. But yeah, I mean, I've got so many relationships that have been started because of Star Wars. There's so many that I've had, I've got a child that I've named Luke for all right, and named after the Bible character. No, it's named after Luke Skywalker. So, I mean, this is, it's a part of who I am, and it is a part of my DNA, and it's a part of my children's DNA now. And the idea of seeing like my daughter and how much she just loves Rey and loves Star Wars. And she's like, and I've never pushed it on her. Right. I've never pushed it on her. She is just doing it because, one, she did it because Daddy liked it first, but now she's so into Star Wars, and this has become her thing. And, these new characters are her characters, and the sequel trilogy is her sequel trilogy, is her trilogy. That's her Star Wars. Those are the things that those all play into why Star Wars is so important to us. So I don't know. I don't know if I made any sense. I probably made a mess of all that, but that's kind of where my head's at anyways. Yeah. All right. Well, with that, let's talk about, I think we're going to end the show there because I think we're kind of way over on time. I know we went a little bit longer, but I think it was a great conversation. So thanks for indulging me with all of your top 10s, and I'm sorry I kind of put you on the spot for some of this stuff, having to pick your children here. So let's talk about the network. So we got a couple things going on in the network, and you have some news that you probably want to share with our listeners. What is that? What's going on with you, Maggie?
Yes. So after 3 lovely weeks here, I will also be joining the Earglue Media with my own podcast.
What?
I know. I'm super excited about it. It is not about Star Wars. It is about period films and history. I am co-hosting it with my friend Nicole. We've been friends for about a decade. We both started out with degrees in history and working in the history field, and now we are both in the film industry. She is a film critic in North Carolina, and I am an actor. So we're kind of combining those two loves, and we're going to talk about period dramas. So our first episode will be launching super soon.
What do you want to tell our listeners the name of your show?
Yes, it is called Petticoats and Poppies: History Girls at the Movies.
Awesome. And what a perfect day to announce this on International Women's Day too.
Right?
Yeah, we didn't plan that.
No.
But yeah, that's awesome. And I am super excited for you girls. I've had a chance. I'm very fortunate to be helping out with the show in the background. So I'm not going to be on the show, but in the background. And I am super excited what you guys are going to bring, because you both have some very interesting opinions. You guys are coming at it from very different perspectives. Like you said, given your backgrounds and your where you guys work today. So we will probably have that out here very soon. I think by the time this next show comes out, we'll have a better idea of terms of when you guys can pick that up. But yeah, good luck to you. I think it's going to be super exciting.
I'm super happy to have this opportunity.
Yeah. And welcome to the family. It's you can't get out. Like I said, it's like the mafia. So good luck. I'm kidding. We're not the mafia. Anything but. So a couple other things too. We've got so I know a lot of our listeners have bought clothing and merch historically from TeePublic, and Mike has redone. We've moved vendors. We're over at Surged Clothing. So we'll put a link in the show notes, but we've got the EGM merch already up, and we'll eventually have the Cantina Cast merch along with the Basement and all of the other shows as well. So we'll get that up here. So again, I think this offers us some more things too that we didn't have with TeePublic. So we're looking forward to it. I think the prices are cheaper as well, if that's your thing. But yeah, take a look at that. We're excited to kind of officially launch that. So by the time you hear this show, that link will be in the show notes, and you'll be able to pick up the new merch there. What else we got going on? Feedback. I do want to give a very, very big shout out to Amanda Baldwin. So Amanda Baldwin has been a Patreon for almost well over 2 years. And she's not on Discord. She doesn't send us emails. She doesn't really interact with us on social media, but she is a true supporter of the show by far. So, Amanda, thank you so much for all of your donations, for your continuous donations to the show. Hopefully we're still giving you the content that you like. And thank you just for being there for us. It really does mean a lot. So, she's been around forever, like one of the very first Patreons we've ever had. So
that's awesome.
Again, special shout out to her. Okay, before we get out of here, where can they find you at?
You can find me on Twitter at Maggie of the Town, and you can find me over on Instagram at the Maggie Lovitt. And if you're looking for our new podcast, we do have a Twitter account. It is a bunch of letters and podcast. So it is History Girls at the Movies. So it's the first letter of each of those words, and eventually I'll get my spiel down better for it. But yes.
Cool. And we'll put that, I'll have Mike get that in the show notes as well, so you guys can follow them on Twitter. And then if you are looking for us, we haven't done this in a while, but just as a reminder, you can find us on Instagram at The Cantina Cast, Twitter at The Cantina Cast, on Facebook /The Cantina Cast. If you'd like to send us an email, you can do so at cantinacastfanmail@gmail.com, or on iTunes. We've got a Discord server. We've got our Patreon. Those links will be in there as well. And if you'd like to send us a voicemail or send us a text, you can do so at 803-717-CAST. That's 803-717-CAST. I haven't done that in like a year, and I pulled it off. Okay, well, that's going to do it for us this week. We'll be back next week with another show. And Maggie, any last words before we go?
No, that's everything. Bright suns.
Bright suns. All right, we'll see you guys next week.
You're still listening? Wow, that's amazing. Well, I'm here to give you the disclaimer. Normally we do a big, long, drawn-out disclaimer thing saying what's what and who's what and all that other stuff, but I think you guys kind of know that Lucasfilm and Disney have no affiliation with us at all, and we have none with them. We talk about Star Wars, which is their property, and all that other good, fun stuff, but I think you can tell which is our stuff and which is their stuff. If you can't, well, then send a lawyer to send an email to me, and I'll be glad to chat with them. Other than that, you know what's what, so that's your disclaimer.